Okay, today I'm going to show you how we're going to paint our cupcakes. You will need to first grab out your planning sheet, and you should have the cupcake that you decide to make out of clay colored. And then you also want to think about the colors down here for step 3 where it's painting. Some of you may not have done this already. If you haven't, you'll want to do this before you start with paint. So you want to think about the colors you will be using for your cupcake. The base color would be the color that you're using for the bottom part of your cupcake. And then the frosting color would be the main color on the top. And then you would have other colors that would be for decoration. So I have the yellow here that I was going to use for these lemon shaped pieces. And then I wanted to do brown to have my chocolate chips look brown. And then green, a lighter green for my added frosting on there. So you want to go through that, and once you have that all planned out, then you will come to me with this sheet and you will get your paints. You will get a tray like this with the colors that you need. Now, if you notice in here, I'm missing something. I have white, but there's no white on here. I'm going to need white so that I can make my lighter color. So that is why there is white on my tray. The other things you'll need to paint will be a water container for when we clean out our paintbrushes. In between colors, you want to make sure you wash out the brush. And then you want a piece of paper towel so that you can dry out your brush once you've finished with color. To start with, you're going to want to start with the big spaces. So if I look back at my plan, if I want to do my bottom first, I would do the brown color, or I could do the dark green for the frosting. I'm going to start with the brown color. Now you can decide whether or not you want to paint the inside of your cupcake or not, but I do want the outside to be painted. So I'm going to just dip into the brush and cover this completely. You do want to put it on kind of thick so that you don't have any white showing through. And you want to make sure you don't have any peekaboos. You don't have to go all the way to the bottom. You don't have to cover up your name, but you want to make sure that when it's sitting on something that you do not see white on the edge. Okay, so then you just simply brush this on. Careful to fill in all the cracks. If you're having some problems with some nooks and crannies that seem to stay white even though you brush it, the trick is to make sure you have a loaded brush, a lot of paint on your brush, and you just kind of dab it in those areas. So start in the areas that are sort of the roughest, and then the extra paint left over can go over the smooth areas. You should find that this paint dries rather quickly. If you go back over here, you can tell I can touch it and it's dry already. Our bisqueware, this white looking clay, is called bisqueware. It is sort of like a sponge. When it goes through the kiln gets rid of all the moisture inside that sponge, so there's all these openings waiting for things to go into it. So that is what the paint will do. It kind of gets sucked into those openings in the sponge and it dries rather quickly. Okay, and you would just continue this all the way around. Once you get, let's say I've painted this whole thing, once I get to the other side, you're going to want to double check. Like here, I'm not sure if this shows up on the video, but I can see some lighter areas. And in those cases, I would want to rebrush over those areas so that I have a consistent color throughout. Okay, and again, it is your option to do the inside. I want you to do the edge here, paint the edge. But if you want to leave that white on the inside, I'm fine with that. If you'd rather paint it, you can do that as well. Okay, so let's say that one is completed. Now it's time for frosting. I'm changing colors. So again, when we wash out our brushes, we tap the brush at the bottom of the water container, and that opens up, it separates the bristles and opens up the areas where the paint is stuck, and that helps clean it. You want to kind of wipe it on the edge here to see what color you get out. And then of course you dry it on paper towel to make sure that you just have a wet paper towel and no color showing. Now I can go back to my green. And I'm going to, on your frosting, it's very important that you are careful with your edges. So I'm going to dip my edges here, or get some paint on my brush, and I want to work on this edge first because this is the most important edge. I want to have a nice clean edge here, and I want to do my best to not get it where I don't want it. The good news with the paint is that I can paint over it once it dries, so I'm not going to get all concerned about that little oopsies I have on there. And now that I have this area painted, I can go a little bit quicker here. I don't have to be quite as careful. I have to be very careful on my edge. I'm going very slow. I'm sort of pulling my brush around to get to all those edges, pulling it along, keeping my bristles all the same direction. I can switch it around if I see white coming through. And then I can go a little bit quicker once I get down further away from the details. Okay. Again, and this is an option. If you want to paint the inside of your cupcake, you may. You don't have to, but you should do the outside edge. So you should go over and do this lip here. And you want to go down all the way to that place. And it's very important that you are thorough. You don't want to see little white spots peeking through. It's not going to look very nice. You want these to look appetizing. So you want it to be neat and clean and pretty so that people will want to eat it. It should look delicious. Okay. So let's say I went all the way around and got my dark green done. Now I can work on my light green. I want to kind of go from big space to small space. Again, I wash up my brush. I want to dry my brush. And now I want to make a lighter green for the top of my frosting here. So I'm going to take some of my green. I'm going to take a pretty good scoop of my green, and I'm going to put it in and mix it with my white. The more green I use, the darker this will be. The less green I use, the lighter this will be. So this is called a tint of green. I'm mixing this with white. And remember, when we mix, we always start with the lightest color first. Now, I think I want it to be a little bit darker, so to add more green, I have to, of course, clean out my brush first. I want to make sure that I get all of the paint off. Now I can see there's a little bit of paint here on the metal part, so I'm going to rub that with my finger, do a little more tapping, and then I'll double check on my paper towel to make sure that that is clean. Okay, I'm going to take another pretty big scoop. And hopefully this will be a little bit of a deeper green. I don't want it to be super light. I want it to still seem obvious that it is green. And I am much happier with this color. So now because I mixed, I have a lot of paint on my brush. I'm going to try to scrape some of this paint off so that it's not quite so bulky. And then again on this part, I have to be extra careful with the edge. I want to go down because this stands out. I want to go along that edge that I am touching with the dark green. And I want to make sure I get that all covered, no white showing. My brush is pretty full, so it's even going into the little nooks and crannies. And then as you can see, I painted right over that oopsies that I had with the dark green. Now once I have that edge done, I can go a little bit quicker on the other parts. I know this is going to be a dark brown, so I don't have to be quite so careful there. Brown will easily cover up this light green. But I also want to work on brush control. I want to be neat and make it look appetizing. So there you have it, the basics for finishing up your cupcake. Once you have this whole thing painted, I still have a few more details to add. And as I look back, I probably would want to do another layer with my green here. But once I'm happy with my painting, then I'm going to put a clear coat. It's called the gloss medium, which will go over everything, and that just helps protect the color. And then you will be finished.